But it's amazing looking back how once you care about something, you find a way to get that done. And I think many people will understand that we're pretty good starters, but it's really hard to finish something.
Welcome to GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, aka the Going North Podcast, where authors from around the world help you realize that success is tangible. You'll leave with at least one new piece of inspiration or information to help you keep going north. Now let's get on with the show. Today's episode is sponsored by both books, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, and the follow-up bestseller, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Head over to Amazon.com, pick up both books. They are available in a trifecta of paperback, audio, and ebook. Cop all three of both and be on the lookout for another book from yours truly to help podcasters succeed. Now let's get on with today's episode. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, is the Going North Podcast. We got another super special, awesome human for you today, my friends. That's right, indeed. Hailing from the opposite side of the globe. That's right, indeed. My man likes to chill out in both parts of Australia as well as Japan, indeed. So let's give it up for this wonderful gentleman right here. He's a father, husband, Japanologist, and researcher. And on top of that, he's a bookcaster. So not only has joined the business of immortality, known as authorship, he's also got a podcast that's up and running with both feet. So let's give it up for the N and the K himself, Nicholas Kemp. How you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing really well, Dom. It's a real joy to be joining you. So thank you for having me on your show. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's right, indeed. So like my man reached out to me on podmatch.com and you actually noted the actual episode you listened to and the fact that you actually love Japan. Like, I'm like, dude, I gotta have you on, man. Freaking Ikigai. Like, that hasn't been covered yet.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
That's right, indeed. Well, my goodness, as with all introductions, they only cover maybe one blanket worth of content that equals maybe 2 hours. That covers probably the whole entirety of 9,600 hours of your life. So my goodness, mind giving you a bit of your backstory of how you got to where you are today since it's your first time on the podcast?
Sure, Dom. I guess I'd relate it to Japan as we're going to be talking about Ikigai. My first trip to Japan, believe it or not, was in 1977 when I was a 5-year-old. So
Wow.
going back, my father was a physicist. And he was asked to share his research. He worked for the Australian government. And so we went to quite a few countries. I remember we went to Hawaii and Amsterdam, all these countries. But Japan definitely stood out. And I have some very fond memories. I think we only stayed there for 3, 4, 5 days. And one night my parents had to go out to dinner, and so they got a babysitter for me and my brother at the hotel. And yeah, I have some memory of her, I think, folding origami and being very playful, and me and my brother running around the room in the hotel like ninjas or something. So that might have left a lasting impression on me. And then about 20 years later, I decided to go back to Japan. I was studying hospitality. And at the time in Australia, in Melbourne, we had a lot of Japanese tourists coming to visit Japan. So it kind of made sense to, try and get over to Japan. So I was awarded a traineeship with 3 other Australians, and that was in 95. And that was amazing. That was an incredible year of growth, learning the language, discovering Japanese culture, making all these friends. And it was also challenging. We did, 12-hour days, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 6 days a week. And that really was a life-changing experience. And then I returned to Australia, and the plan was for this company to open a chain of restaurants in Melbourne, but it didn't really look like it was gaining traction, and I didn't want to be in hospitality. So I went back to teach English, and then yeah, after that was all about discovering entrepreneurship in Japan, starting my own school, getting married. I eventually had my son. My son was born in Japan, and I went through all these phases of growth, starting my own school, starting my own information product. And yeah, we can get on to Ikigai later, but I guess Japan's sort of like my spirit country in a way. I really have an affinity with the people, love the culture. And it's just one of those fascinating cultures where you could live there 100 times and you'd still be learning more and more. So incredible culture.
If you can say that again, especially from the outside looking in, indeed, just like the whole, of course, the Tokyo being extremely modern from the outside looking in, then of course parts where Kyoto they still got their wonderful temples and everything else going on. It's like rich with culture. It's like gold brick after gold brick. It's like its own Fort Knox metaphorically.
You love that expression, brick by brick, which I heard on another episode and instantly made me think of Denzel Washington in The Equalizer and one of my favorite actors. So, brick by brick, I'm going to take you down or something. He says something. um, but you're right. I lived in Tokyo for 4 years, and that was a very intense place to live
Oh.
in when you're catching the train every day, and you almost have to be like a Terminator when you're just going through these crowded stations and bumping into people. You got to have confidence. You've got to know where you're going. And then where my wife is from, she's from a village actually, and it's famous for pottery. So my father-in-law is a potter. So I really, yeah, I've had that experience of the extreme of the modern city to traditional Japanese culture and living in a small village. So yeah, that was both both fascinating and both had its challenges of living in a big city and the stress of that, and then living in a very small village where I wouldn't see another foreigner for months. So that was isolating at times. But that opened that, I guess that in a way was a chance for me to, discover who I was and deal with things like loneliness and isolation. And yeah, so definitely recommend living abroad if you have the chance in a culture that's radically different to your own.
Oh yeah, definitely say that again. Indeed, it's so true. Indeed, gives you that extra layer of experience. So, what was probably one of the, I guess, probably three of the greatest things you picked up from the Japanese culture, being able to go in and out of the country and live, I guess, in different parts of your life in that country.
Well, that is a hard question to answer, but one thing that comes to mind, there's an expression in Japanese called chanto suru, which essentially means to do things properly or do things well. And so if you ever go to Japan, it doesn't matter really what they're doing. They seem to do everything well. So that the customer service experience in Japan's amazing. You always feel served, you feel respected, and they seem to have really good systems on doing things. So even going to a convenience store will sort of blow you away at the level of customer service and care they take with how they serve you. So that's something that I always look forward to, because in Australia where we kind of got this laid back, she'll be right, mate, no worries. And when you're going to the supermarket, you'll have co-workers sort of chatting to each other as they're serving you, sort of almost unaware that you're there. So that's a big cultural difference, how they put a lot of care into everything they do. Another aspect of Japanese culture is, I guess, this sense of unity and harmony, which is mostly positive, but I think for many Japanese, it's also can be stressful. I remember one particular time where I really understood this. this idea of unity or social conformity. My son actually spent his first year in primary school or kindergarten, I guess you'd say, in Japan. And he was, this adorable little boy. And I used to walk him to kindergarten and sort of play with him. And then I would spend, 5 minutes saying goodbye, holding his little hands, and saying, "Oh, I love you and have a good day." And so one day, as I was doing this, he'd been playing with a friend, a lovely little girl, and they were sort of standing up to get ready for morning assembly. And yeah, I'm sort of kneeling, saying goodbye to him. And then I noticed sort of cigarette smoke and sort of turned to my right and saw this father standing above me, looking at his daughter. And he just said in Japanese, obviously, "Don't cause trouble today." And I wanted to like slap his cigarette out and confront him and say, why would you say that to your daughter? She's adorable and you're smoking a cigarette. And I was really affected by it. I was really angry. Like I was quite upset, thinking, why would you say that as your parting words to your daughter? And I remember going home. And so this expression is meiwaku kakenaide. And so meiwaku means trouble. Kakeru means to cause. So kakenaide is like the imperative negative, don't cause trouble. And a few conversations with my wife and some friends kind of ended up me understanding it more like just be good today. But it really highlighted that in Japanese culture, they're very aware of how they're perceived and if they're causing trouble on others. So they're very cautious. And so Japanese are kind of famous for not expressing opinions or any radical opinions. There's another expression, the standing nail gets hammered down in Japanese society. So you should not stand out, and you should not cause trouble for others. And I was shocked that was ingrained into children at such a young age. So that was something that really shocked me. And I guess the biggest takeaway for me has been, just through friendship, appreciation. Japanese certainly appreciate all aspects of their life. And I remember I would go out with Japanese friends for a bowl of ramen, and the glee and happiness on their faces as they're eating this ramen. It's like they won $1 million or something. They were just so present and really enjoying the sensory pleasure of their food. And like we'd go out for, I don't know, I'd go on a date with a girl and end up ordering cheesecake or something. And you get this slither of cheesecake. And I'm thinking, oh, I need another slice as I'm eating mine, not even really enjoying it. And, my date would be really enjoying the taste and saying, oh, how soft and creamy and delicious it is. And I'm sort of thinking, oh, this is not enough. So that really taught me to appreciate sensory pleasure and be in the moment. So I guess there are 3 lessons. Yeah.
There we go. 3 solid lessons indeed. Being present, especially. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Definitely. And huge, definitely, because like a lot of reminders of why we probably even need to really be in the present moment, have high appreciation for, because we ain't going to get it again.
That's it. Be in the moment, be in the here and now. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So my goodness, so being fluent in both English and Japanese and being able to switch back and forth like with all that and being a Japanologist, with all the knowledge you have, you actually decided to really put some information out there about Ikigai, but your book is called Ikigai-Kan. So what's the meaning behind that, my man?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Dom. So Kan is a word that translates to emotion, feeling, awareness. So Ikigai is something you feel, and this might surprise some people who have heard the word. So in the West, Ikigai is misunderstood as this sweet spot of doing something that you love, that you're good at, that the world needs and that she can be paid for. So it's become this sort of entrepreneurial model. And yeah, that has nothing to do with the concept at all. So for Japanese, Ikigai is something you experience and feel. So the term Ikigai-Kan actually came from me researching Japan's pioneering researcher, this incredible woman called Miyako Kamiya, who wrote a book in the 1960s called Ikigai ni Tsuite, and that would translate to about Ikigai or on Ikigai. And she defined Ikigai as you have Ikigai sources or Ikigai objects, so people, relationships, hobbies, even memories, aspects of your work, even things you're looking forward to. And then associated to those objects, you have these feelings, yeah? So, we're having this kind of intimacy now, you and me, this intellectual intimacy. We're sharing, we feel good. So we probably could say, oh, this is an Ikigai experience. The conversation is the object, and we're both enjoying ourselves, we're laughing, there's a sense of connection. So Ikigai is something you feel, and you often experience it in the small things, when you hug a family member, when you catch up with an old friend and go out for a meal, when you feel growth and you feel yourself developing, or when your favorite music from the 80s comes on, or when you go into a convenience store or some sort of sweet shop and you see candy from your childhood and you go, I love that candy. So it can be small things, but Ikigai can also be life-defining goals that you pursue. And that's where purpose ties in. So the word for purpose is shimei, and then you would have shimei-kan, which would translate to a sense of purpose. So this word kan is crucial for these ideas of Ikigai, purpose, many other words. Ibasho-kan, so ibasho is your place to be, a place of belonging. So ibasho-kan would be a sense of belonging. So it is something you feel. And Ikigai is this idea coming from the verb ikiru, which means to live, and gai, which means value, worth, or effect. So a life worth living is a life full of Ikigai. And as Ikigai is something you feel, I guess the idea is to have a lot of experiences, shared experiences, try new things. But the book was really, for me, an opportunity to share all the research and knowledge of my guests on my podcast, because they were professors, doctors, researchers, and I sort of brought all this knowledge together with the message that, hey, it's something you feel, and we want to feel that life is worth living. So that's what Kan means. That was a bit of a long rant.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. It's right indeed. So, my goodness. So, if I'm hearing you right, in a way, it could even translate to really feeling out your values and living them, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. So that's actually a crucial aspect, that if you're living your life aligned to your values and you're not compromising your values, then you will kind of naturally express or feel Ikigai. But if you're in a relationship or in a job and you experience a conflict, a value conflict, or you have to compromise your values every day, yeah, that can have a massive impact on your sense of self, your well-being. And unfortunately, Dom, I think a lot of people live that life. They're in a job they don't enjoy. They feel stuck in maybe some relationships. And as a result, maybe for part of their day, their life is not worth living. They feel like, oh, I can't wait to get to Friday, or Sunday night comes and they're like, oh no, I've got to go to work. And I used to definitely have those thoughts many years ago.
That's what I'm talking about. So, sounds like you don't have to worry about it now. And heck, even having a school of your own. So I'm guessing, is it the school of Ikigai then? Were you the head dean of all Ikigai? At least.
Well, maybe that will happen in the future, but it's a very small community. So it's Ikigai Tribe. And it serendipitously seemed to evolve after I started doing the podcast. I thought, I mean, when I started the podcast, the intention was just to offer a Japanese perspective on Ikigai. I didn't know what would happen. In the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could also, generate an income out of this? But I wasn't sure how. My first idea was just to make some sort of video course. But after 6, 7, 8 months, the podcast was getting traction, and a few people contacted me saying, oh, do you coach this concept? Like I'm a coach and I want to coach it. And I was aware that some people were coaching the Western version or the Western appropriation, I guess. And I kind of thought, well, oh, this is interesting. But at the time I thought, well, look, it's not even something they coach in Japan. In Japan, it's just a word to them. It's become very popular and viral. But at the same time, I knew there was a lot of research in Japanese and a growing body of research from the 60s to current day, academics that was very relatable to positive psychology. So I kind of knew if I did more research and looked into it, there could be something. But I was also a little bit hesitant because I thought, is this appropriate? And then I didn't even know what, really didn't understand certification, because I knew accreditation was, requires some governing body to basically give their stamp of approval. But I was thinking, what, do you just certify yourself and make something up? And I thought, surely you don't. So I contacted my mentor, my business mentor, and said, hey, you just don't make something up and certify yourself, do you? And he's like, that's exactly what you do. And you should do it, Nick. You've interviewed the experts, you've lived in Japan, you speak Japanese. So I thought, okay. And then I spoke to several researchers and said, look, there's actually a demand for people wanting to understand what Ikigai is so that they can coach it. Is this okay? And they're like, yeah. Like, they were sort of saying, our research, we're researchers, we're not marketers. It's really hard for us to get our research out there. So if you can help us get our research out there, that would be great. And they're actually supporters of my community. They deliver special guest webinars. I've actually got someone tonight delivering a webinar on this really interesting theme. So we all have roles. One of your roles is a podcast host. And so he coined the term rollfulness, which is fascinating. And so we all have roles, and even our roles can be really strong sources of Ikigai, because we have a sense of purpose, sense of identity, a connection with others. We can learn from others. We can teach others. And so, this idea of rollfulness is very much tied to life satisfaction, sense of purpose, and as a result, Ikigai. So, I've got this Japanese professor 6 hours from now, and he's going to be delivering a webinar. So I've managed to bring, this small community of coaches, psychologists, doctors, educators, and just people interested in the concept together. And I have very small cohorts, no more than 5 people. And it's an 8 to 10 week program. And it gets quite intimate, and sometimes people cry because it gets quite emotional, because we're talking, about what makes your life worth living. And that can get, to the tears of joy, or even the tears of, regret, or all these areas. So it gets pretty intense, but it's incredibly life affirming. And I feel like I'm in the Matrix, and someone's going to just pull me out and go, sorry, Nick, you've got to build another website, or you've got to do some SEO work.
So. That's right. Mr. Anderson.
That's what I'm talking about.
We knew your middle name was Anderson.
Fantastic. Having too much fun.
I blame the buns for the fun. But that's freaking good right there, indeed. That you're able to really get out there and have your own certification program and have the researchers come on board like that. And rollfulness, like I'm pretty sure that's probably going to be a book down the road from somebody. And heck, even The Rock will be proud, jokingly, back in the day when we say know your role.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good idea. It's either a new term or definitely a new term in psychology, maybe, but a book, rollfulness, how to discover your life roles and feel good about it. I don't know. You'll have to help me, Dom, on the tagline.
There we go. We both can be it.
We can both write a book together.
Yeah, that's right indeed. East and West. That's right indeed. Call it West.
Love it.
So my goodness, having a certification program and basically being the dean and helping folks to really shed tears of joy and think about their regrets and create a life where it's like they'll have less of them down the road. Like, what was probably the most uphill part about finally getting your book out there to the masses and the molasses?
Yeah, that was a challenge for me. I struggled at school. I scraped through high school. I actually had to take extra English lessons. So my grammar, my spelling, and my sense of, just my self-esteem related to that. I just thought, oh, look, I don't have the vocabulary. I can't articulate myself. And I kind of had those thoughts for many years. But then, I mean, writing the book was kind of the next logical thing in my journey. And it was encouraged by a few of my community members who were academics. And one amazing person in my first cohort is a technical editor. And she was very encouraging and said, look, your entire program is pretty much a dissertation. And she kind of, I don't know if she was joking or she was sort of, putting me up to the challenge, but she definitely planted the seed when she said, you should write a book. She said, if you do write a book, I'll edit it for you because I'm a technical editor. And I just thought, okay, that's nice and everything, but there's just no way I'm going to write a book. A year later, I'm sort of thinking, I'm going to write a book. I invested, and then I invested in I thought I need help, I don't know how to do this. So I invested in a book coach, and that was a really, really bad decision. That ended up being a really terrible investment of time and money. It was a lot of money, and I kind of blame myself. I didn't do my due diligence. And some people do write a book this way, and it just didn't work for me. But you basically get interviewed, and they interview you each chapter, and they have a formula, and they ask you, the same 3 questions. And why is this important? How do you use it? How do you connect it? And from the beginning, I just thought, this is not going to work, maybe. And who knows? Maybe I became a source of frustration for my coach. Oddly, she was quite unreceptive to some of the ideas I was presenting, and I was being greeted, well, that doesn't make sense to me, or don't use that word. There were words I apparently shouldn't use. And so after 3 months and spending, like $10,000, I had nothing I could work with. And then that was it. I thought, you are invested in this now. You've spent your $10,000, so you have got to write it. And so I did it traditional, old school. I just put together a structure. I had all this podcast content. I thought, well, I can share all this knowledge from my guests. And I thought, I'm going to embrace this idea of I'll write the book, and then I'll reach out to this amazing lady, Caitlin Kite, who offered to edit the book. And that became quite an intimate process of me writing chapters and eventually sharing the book with her and discussing it and sort of revealing all these personal stories and my thoughts with just one person initially. And she took great care in editing the book, encouraging me to go deeper in some areas and, being very careful with her editing and removing content that was maybe a bit too wordy or just not relevant. And she had published her own book as well. So in the end, it took just over a year. But it's amazing looking back how once you care about something, you find a way to get that done. And I think many people will understand that we're pretty good starters, but it's really hard to finish something, yeah? Like to actually, especially a book, like where do you stop writing? Like, and then you're carefully crafting each sentence, and then each sentence must flow into another sentence, into a paragraph, and then where does a paragraph end? Where do you start the next one? And then chapter. But somehow I was able to do it. But I was very lucky and had this amazing editor. And I also had this incredible body of content from Japanese researchers, authors, non-Japanese who'd studied Ikigai or related concepts. So it was a real joy to bring all that together. And sort of be selling it now. It's amazing. So my message would be if you're at a phase in your life where there's an opportunity to do something, but you feel you're completely unqualified, don't believe that. Find a way to start and be your own best friend in that process. Be encouraging, be helpful to yourself. And we all know how quickly a year can go. Like a year can go so quickly, but you can achieve quite a lot in a year with a little bit of work every day.
So I'm talking about indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Definitely. Yep, can get a lot done in a year. That's right. You can get a lack of nothing done in a year too. It's amazing.
That's true.
It's like, man, what the heck did I do this year? Nothing. You know what? That sounds about right. Yeah. Nothing. Let me stop.
I think you've done quite a few podcast episodes. So, yeah. We can definitely, I mean, gosh, I just started. There's definitely a balance. Like last night, I I pushed the buy button on a streaming service. We call it Stan in Australia, just to watch Yellowstone. So I know I'm giving up, I don't know how many hours, 10, 15, 20 hours of my time to entertainment. And that's okay. But I know for many people, you could spend, I think if you spend 4 hours a day watching TV or YouTube, that is a month of your year gone. So put it in that context. And then if you watch 8 hours, you're in big trouble. That's like at least 2 months, or maybe just, I don't know. I think it's 4 to 6 hours. You lose a month. So that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Definitely is crazy indeed. It's like, hey, you just got to be mindful of where you're using that time indeed. So, my goodness. So, since you've been on a few podcasts promoting the good work that you're doing across the globe, is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often when you're on the guest side of the game?
Sure. I think a lot of people ask, well, they have this idea of how can you find your Ikigai? And the answer is it's not something you really find. It's something you uncover, because as you noted, Dom, it's related to your values, yeah. And a good way to think about this, if you're bored, if you're struggling, if you're frustrated, go back to perhaps something in your teens, your childhood or your teens that was meaningful, an old hobby. Take up that hobby you've been putting off, but start small. And goes back to that idea of appreciation. And if you're really struggling and you think, oh man, there's nothing I can find, call an old friend. Check in with an old friend, call them up, out of the blue. If you can catch up, catch up. If you can't, just call them and have a nice call. You'll reminisce. You'll have this feeling of nostalgia, and you'll definitely feel better after the phone call. So that's a good way to sort of kickstart your ikigai, because it really is tied to your social world. And yeah, call an old friend. If that's one takeaway from today, yeah.
There you go. That's right. Indeed. Call somebody, indeed, baby. That's right. Especially if their name is Tyrone, call them. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Call them Tyrone, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, speaking of wonderful good times, what would you consider your biggest failure that actually became your biggest success?
I don't know. I think if I look at my son and that he feels he's well adjusted, he's genuinely happy is we've got to be careful with the word happy, because if you ask a parent, you say, what do you want for your children? They'll say, oh, I just want them to be happy. And of course you want that, but I think you want your kids to be well adjusted, to be resilient, to be able to overcome hardship, to follow their dreams. So my son is pursuing his dream of music production, and yeah, he seems well adjusted. He knows he's loved. So I don't want to say, he's my success story, but I feel like that role of being a parent is something I really enjoyed. It was really important for me to be a loving and playful and caring father. So I'm really happy I've done that. Even though I did upset him today a little bit. So it's always a challenge. Yeah, I think building that intimate relationship with my son and being fun and playful as a dad is something I'm really proud of. Yeah. And feel lucky I was able to, I don't know, have those feelings and could do that comfortably. There are many people who just can't do that for whatever reason, their own upbringing, their own connection to their parents. They just fear expressing love. Yeah, so it's definitely not professional. It's that connection with my boy.
There you go. That's right, indeed. So I guess a failure in the beginning, and then ended up fixing it towards the. Well, I wouldn't say end, because you're both still alive, thank God. And there's still a lot more years to go that I want you both to have. So hey, it looks like it's working out.
Yeah, it's good, man. We're all happy, man. It's an interesting time for young kids. They've got so much to deal with, and our life experience doesn't really help. We grew up in a different time, and our experience is not their experience. So you've got to be good at, I think, good parenting's asking questions and trying to understand their experience. But yeah, it's all a journey, isn't it? It goes up and down and loop the loop, and you have your highs and lows. But Ikigai's really interesting on some levels. It's a coping mechanism. So if you really are going through a struggling time, there are things that can help you get through it. Your favorite music, your favorite food. But at the same time, yeah, your Ikigai could become a personal mission where you want to solve a problem in society, or have some sort of professional success too. So it's up to you to decide what it is and feel it.
That's right. Feel the good vibrations. That's right. That's right, indeed. Feel the good vibrations, indeed.
That's it, Dom. You're onto it.
That's right. It's Nicky Nick and the Ikigai Bunch. That's right.
Good name for a band. Yeah. Nicky Nick and the Ikigai Bunch.
That's right. Ooh. That's right.
Might be a bit hard rock, but hey, we could have Could have one of those big bands, big brass band, and 30 members.
So if your book Ikigai-Kan, if it was a food, what would it be and why?
That is an interesting question. I guess it would be, obviously, it'd have to be Japanese food. The definitely would not be processed. It would be organic. It would be tied to nature. It might be. There's actually a food. Or it's a Zen style of eating, and now it's become not high class, but it is considerably expensive because it's involves, I think, at least 7 courses, and it's called kaiseki. So kaiseki is this Zen-based cooking that's evolved into, I guess, very good eating, and it's a course of 7 small dishes, and the dedication and care that's put into each dish, both taste and presentation, yeah, sort of goes to the extreme. And actually, when I first went to meet my wife's family as a friend, we were just friends at that stage. I actually met my wife in Melbourne. And when I went to Japan, when she returned on a holiday, I went to meet her and meet her family. And her father rang the local kaiseki restaurant and organized dinner for us. So we're in this private room. I had no idea what was going on. And every 20 minutes, yeah, you come in with this small dish. And I'm looking at the food thinking, what is this? Looks like a piece of fish with leaves and twigs and flowers on it. And yeah, it was quite an experience. So I guess my book's kind of like kaiseki because it's got all these different opinions from all these different Japanese and non-Japanese people, each offering a different taste or perspective on ikigai. So there's a bit of raw fish, there's a bit of beef, there's egg custard, there's uni, which is sea urchin. All this stuff's in the book. Good question.
Sounds like a fancy buffet to me.
Could be just very, very low on quantity. Very small dishes with lots of love and care put into them. Yeah.
There you go. That's right, indeed. Extra tiny. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right. Extra tiny, but with all the care in the world. It's a Care Bear without the bear.
That's what Japanese love. They love that attention to detail. So, yeah, they actually have a word for that too. Kodowari, this idea of taking extreme care with the fine details of one's work. And so that's why Japan's kind of famous for some of their technology or their craftsmanship. They go to the extreme, seeking perfection, knowing they'll never get it, but they continue to strive for it. Whereas maybe in the West, we have that near enough is good enough kind of mentality. So that's something else I learned. Precision, care, going beyond what's expected of you.
There we go. They go beyond indeed. That's right, indeed. So we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is if wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but you're still in the current year with all of your knowledge and experience. What advice would you give to yourself?
Well, I'd probably say, yeah, live more. Like, don't be so hesitant and don't think you're not good enough or you're not worthy. I'll try and say, I mean, if I was 25, yeah, I'd be going out living life to the max while I've got this youthful energy. I would be reading more, making more friends, learning more. And I wish you'd said it was like 10 years ago, because then I'd invest in Bitcoin or something. But that's just me being silly. But yeah, I mean, I feel quite youthful now. I'm actually 50, and I feel like Ikigai is giving me this new energy. So life is experiential, yeah. If we understand, we have all these experiences. So the more experiences you have, the more you understand the world, other people, yourself. And there's a second wave of positive psychology called existential positive psychology, where you go through challenges. And when you go through these challenges, you experience growth, you overcome adversity, you develop resilience, and you come out of it as a more developed person, more compassionate, more understanding person. So I'd even encourage that. Like, if you've got a challenge to face, face it. So I guess if I was 25 again, I'd have that energy to take on more challenges. Yeah, that's what I'd be thinking. Living life. I mean, not to that. I don't want to cliche it and say I live life to the max, but really be proactive and think, what do I want to achieve? What do I want to do today? What is worth doing? So there's actually another word in Japanese that's far more common than ikigai, and it's yarigai. So yaru is the verb to do. Yarigai means something that is worth doing. So this conversation, worth doing, connect with you, have a meaningful discussion, and hopefully our audience enjoys it and learns something. So rather than think, what's going to be pleasant and enjoyable, maybe, like watching Yellowstone, that'll be enjoyable and pleasant. But I could think, well, maybe I should go out and, I don't know, meet people or study Japanese a bit more or help my wife or son. That might be a better use of my time. So that's something I'd probably try to ask myself every day. What is worth doing today, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant? Yeah, good times.
Yeah. That's right. Well, speaking of good times, folks need to have some more good times by checking out your content and following your journey. So, for those need to do just that and keep up with you, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Thank you again, Dom, for the opportunity. So that is at Ikigai-Tribe.com. And I've got a podcast. Of course, I've got a book. And got any questions, feel free to contact me, reach out, and be happy to answer.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed, baby. He'll be happy to answer, indeed. All the way from the opposite side of the globe. That's right, indeed. While you're sunny, he's on the moon side of the game. That's right, indeed. And then it'll be in reverse. You'll be the moon, and then he'll be the sun. That's right, indeed. And then it'll radiate over all the buns and boomerangs. That's right, indeed. That's right.
That's it. That is it. The old buns.
Buns and boomerangs. Oh, well, bums too. Yeah, I was thinking about buns like cinnamon bun, but hey, on the bums too. Shoot, yeah. Let's tan some people.
Give us some beach bumps. So yeah, we're kind of famous for some of our beaches. Yeah, boomerangs. Gee, I wasn't expecting boomerangs today. So.
Well, it came back to you.
Yeah. Don't get me started. How did they make the boomerang? How did they make that? There must have been an Einstein, an Aboriginal who was like an Einstein who just said, well, if we craft this stick and flatten it and curve it and throw it this way, it'll either hit our prey, and if it doesn't, it'll come back and we just pick it up again and throw it. Man, imagine studying that. Imagine the evolution of the boomerang and finding out, if you could, I don't know, maybe in a time machine, find out who made it, who came up with the design. Wow. because all countries, a lot of cultures have spears and whatnot, but only only the boomerangs from Australia. It's kind of that's fascinating. Yeah.
That's right. And take a loaf of bread with you, throw everybody off, and be like, "Oh my gosh, it's sliced bread."
Yes, that expression is, what's the expression?
Best thing since sliced bread.
Sliced bread, yeah. Best thing since a boomerang. Oh yeah. Could go on forever.
Well, before any more rabbit holes appear, any parting words before we close up shop?
No, just really enjoyed myself, Dom. Really appreciate the opportunity. I know how much work goes into a podcast, the planning, the editing, show notes, all that sort of thing. So yeah, I really appreciate your time and for having me on. So thank you very much.
Thanks a bunch for gifting us with your time and your ears to this podcast. If you want to make yourself even more super special awesome, like, subscribe, and share this with somebody that you care about and spread the word so that way we can get this show out to as many people as possible and encourage them and inspire them to one day become published authors of their own and join the business of immortality. Advance others to advance yourself.